Welcome to the We Watch This Movie Podcast, the podcast where we sit down and dissect the latest and greatest in film. I'm Dan, aka Dan Alla Movies, the Nolan connoisseur, the Tarantino lover, the Fincher flincher, the Kubrick Cuba. And Jackson's looking at me very puzzled right now. He didn't expect me to go on this long. I'm joined by the man with over
a few films in his watch list.
Jackson, aka Marshall on Film. How you doing?
Oh, Dan. I'm feeling very chilly. The cold winter is setting here in Melbourne, and with it comes a very grim, grief-struck and mournful movie that we're going to be covering today. But before we get into that, Dan, how are you?
I'm on top of the moon. Our first interview today with the director of the movie we're covering. I can't believe it. 21 episodes in, and we've gotten ourselves Relic director and writer Natalie Erika James. Jackson, how did you enjoy our little interview with her, 20 or so minutes?
What a fantastic 21st birthday present it is for us here at the We Watch This podcast. Natalie, it was so great chatting to you. We know she's listening somewhere out there, and we're very grateful of her time to have a chat with us. We know everyone out there, our listeners, are going to love it. Dan, what happened to movies this week?
Well, we always have some news on a film TNT. T. T-E-N-E-T. And that's what we're going to call it from now on because... Actually, you know what? I started this whole thing where every time we say Tenet, you hear that cue. Now, from now on, I'm restricting the podcast to 3 per episode, okay? For the editor's sake. For the editor's sake, there'll only be 3 Tenet cues, just like the one you just heard. And here comes the last one, Tenet. After that, you aren't going to hear it again because this editor is going to have the time of his life. And I know him quite well. And he told me it's already hard enough, so...
We really do flog him like he's working in a Chinese sweatshop. But Dan, what happened on the set of Tenet?
Oh, well, it wasn't the set of Tenet, actually. It was... No, don't put your hands up. There's no freaking cue now, mate. 3 and that's it. What happened at the set of Dark Knight, one of Nolan's earlier films? My favorite film of all time. Okay. Well, she said something interesting in an interview with Hugh Jackman. She said, Anne Hathaway said, that Nolan likes to do things a little bit differently. He bans chairs on set. And Twitter went into a meltdown saying, this is insane. Well, there's older people on set. Not everyone should have these sort of restrictions. And they were blasting him, but the team of Nolan had to come out and say, no, it's just the main crew, the main cast members here, the actors and actresses. When they're on set, there's no chairs. There's plenty of chairs on set, and there was pictures shown. And so it's just a misunderstanding, but I think it's just another gear in the PR machine for Tenet. I see new stories about it every week. It's just going to build the hype more and more, I think.
We cannot wait for T-E-N-E-T. Just trying to do our editor some justice. This one's for you at Danella Gaming.
And what another piece of news that really struck me. There was 2. So Margot Robbie was set to star in the new Pirates of the Caribbean reboot.
A new movie. Isn't that your favorite series?
I had a soft spot for Pirates, but not anymore. They need to leave it to rest. Apparently Johnny Depp wasn't going to come back. Now he is. I don't know. I think he can't have anyone else but him play Jack Sparrow. So that's just my opinion.
I think a female Jack Sparrow is the best possible direction they could take, right? We've done everything else with this series. We've totally flogged a dead horse that was pretty much 1 foot in the grave from when this series kicked off. So
yeah, tell me how well did the all-female cast of Ghostbusters do? How did the Charlie's Angels reboot do? Tell me that, Jackson. It's not working, these reboots, is what I'm saying. And it's
What do you
nothing
mean?
to
They
do
were
with...
critical darlings and commercial successes, right?
It's not to do with any sort of gender. It's the property is already been done. They've already said what they needed to say. Come up with something new. Even if it is Midsummer, I'm happy.
Dan, after your take on 365 Days, you're clearly just a misogynist.
I'm
I've had
so
enough.
happy. Finally, we've got a good movie to discuss, Relic.
And a female-led movie.
And a female-led movie. Pretty much all females are the three leads here. Emily Mortimer, Robin Neven, and Bella Heathcote. Did I get those three names correct, Jackson?
You're always one to read off IMDb.
No, they're off the top of my head.
You must be so embarrassed!
No, they did a really great job. We'll discuss it a bit further here, but one other piece of news was Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen?
Is rebooting TMNT. How many reboots do we need in this series?
He's rebooting what? Tenon?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I didn't even read into that story because I'm sorry, but please, Seth Rogen, go back to smoking dope. We don't want to see you in this movie or it being produced.
Take this line from The Last Jedi. Famed director Rian Johnson. What a film that was. Let the past die.
Anyway, Jackson, before we get into our Relic review and, of course, our interview with the director, why don't we take a moment to thank our sponsors?
And what sensational sponsors do we have for today? In fact, we've got a new sponsor debuting. Listeners, another 21st birthday present for us. That's Hoyt's Cinemas here in Melbourne, in Victoria. In the midst of another COVID outbreak, Hoyt's are bringing lots of levity, lots of fun for people around the state and around the country. Hoyt's has reopened as of the time of recording, and with that, tickets are only $10. $10 dues. Damn, would that get you out of...
Yes, it definitely would get me out of the house, Jackson. I can't wait to sit in those recliners of Hoyt's magnificent reclining chairs.
Thank you for that very natural ad read. With their reopening, we've got increased cleaning, a maximum of 20 people per cinema, as well as gaps between all the seating. Hoyt's right now are doing a Harry
Potter. It's a spin-off series starring
Potter.
Ron Potter.
A Hermione Weasley marathon. And they're going to be replaying many of Tarantino's films, including Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, and True Romance, directed by Tony Scott. Very underrated feature with Patricia Arquette and Christian Slater. Go check out Hoyt's, because we love movies. We love supporting the companies that we love movies. We love the entertainment industry. They support us, and we definitely support them with our wallets, only $10 per ticket. And of course, who else would be sponsoring us today but the one, the only, ExpressVPN. We all know what ExpressVPN does. We all know what ExpressVPN is. You want to check out expressvpn.com/we watched this for 3 months free on your 12-month plan. expressvpn.com/we watched this. And our great editor is just giving me some very strange looks as I do these ad reads.
Let's get into our review for Relic.
This house seems unfamiliar.
Oh, we've already broken him, and we're...
Oh,
How long
well,
into
guys,
this
I'm
now?
happy to say this is an Australian-Japanese director, Natalie Erika James.
Australian,
This is...
Japanese, and American.
Oh, really?
3 flavors.
I thought
Absolutely.
I heard a little bit of three different accents in there when we interviewed her. Absolutely, really, really enjoyed the film from start to finish. This is my cup of tea. These slow sort of builds that leave you with a lot of questions rather than answers. Trying to work out what's going on here. Long build-ups, not so much jump scares, but with the characters and with the environment, using that to scare us or build us to something further. And when they do sort of hit those beats, it really works. So this one is a tight budgeted film, much like Upgrade and much like Invisible Man. And it was shot here in Melbourne. It's a manifestation of dementia, really, at its core here. It's about mothers and daughters helping each other sort of through life in retrospect. And most of it's set in this small house, but it's so effective the way they use this house and the different angles they can come up with, and the cinematography, the use of sound and sound design. It all just comes together really nicely. It does have a divisive ending. Not everyone's going to like where the ending goes. I have to say I really enjoyed it, even though I was taken back a little bit. It really did affect me, and I was thinking about it long after the credits rolled.
Dan, I couldn't agree any more. This was a very enjoyable picture. You said it, mate. Slow burn, very tense affair that was expertly played off in that second half. And for Natalie Erika James to have produced this with such confidence and such gusto to not go ahead and give those typical American jump scares you might see 10, 20, 30, 40 at that 10-minute mark throughout the horror picture was excellent. In fact, this is more so a family drama than a horror movie, and you get elements of both. I love how some of the themes in this plays into that kind of resentment you have towards your family between a parent to child relationship, and it's very maternal in many of its elements as well. For our listeners who might be thinking, what movie are they talking about here? We want to implore you to check this out. It's going to drop on Stan July 10th. We have to recommend this movie. Get it, check it out, whatever streaming service you can find it. The acting from our three leads was great across the board. Very effective, very realistic. And it's a movie not so much about what is shared, but a lot of what's not shared and what goes unspoken and unsaid, and particularly between families with issues and problems. I know when we do our interview here, Dan mentions how this spoke to him, and it really spoke to me too. So this was an awesome debut for Natalie Erika James.
Oh, we've got to say that. It's a debut as well, her first feature film. She's done a lot of shorts, which I got to watch earlier today. Drumwave, incredibly well shot. Really intriguing film. I wasn't certain on the ending. I don't know how I feel about the ending, but everything up to that was fantastic. And I watched her other shorts. I think it was Creswick. It was a proof of concept, as she said in the interview, and that was a really great short as well. I saw a lot of parallels from Relic to another Australian director's film, Jennifer Kent, in The Babadook. I'm not sure if you've seen this film, Jackson, but
I haven't, but I've heard of it.
One of my favourite horrors of recent memory that, once again, didn't rely on jump scares, but more relied on characters' environment and the other things at play.
Yeah, that it's like an art house spin on horror, right?
It's something different, and it's something unique, and that's what we want to see in the horror genre. There's only so many jump scares in that, and as much as I'm a massive fan of Conjuring, it's one of my favorite horrors of all time. Even they're guilty of hitting a lot of those tropes. So, Jackson, let's get into the interview and sit back and enjoy, guys, and we'll come back and discuss it straight after and head into spoilers. So here's our interview with Natalie. Guys, we are joined by our lovely guest today, the director and co-writer of Relic, Natalie Erika James. How are you today, Natalie?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Now, tell us a bit about this movie. Me and Jackson just got to watch it this week, and I got to say we both absolutely loved it. This is my favorite horror film of the year so far by a mile.
Thanks.
Tell me how this came about.
It was, I guess, a relatively long process to get to the point of releasing the film. We started writing it at the end of 2014. And the idea really came from a particular trip that I took to Japan because I was going to see my grandmother and she had Alzheimer's. And on this trip, it was the first time she couldn't remember who I was. So I had a lot of feelings of guilt about, not seeing her more regularly, that kind of thing. And she also lived in this really creepy, traditional Japanese house that I'd always been really scared of as a kid. So I think those two things kind of came together. And that was really the start of the idea. But yeah, my co-writer Christian White and I worked with a production company in Melbourne called Carver Films. And yeah, we probably did about 3 years of development, and then we shot it end of 2018. So it's been a while since then.
I can't believe the emotion that sort of came out of this film. Like, it's the first horror film I've seen in a while where I actually got a little bit emotional, some of those scenes. And maybe it's because I've dealt with a similar thing you have with a grandparent as well. Tell me a little bit about how you sort of connected into the deeper meaning of that sort of side of the story.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think when I was pitching the film, we were trying to get, investors and producing partners on board. You're often asked, like, what are the comparisons, or what are some references film-wise? And one of the films that often came up as a reference tonally for me was The Orphanage by Boyona. Great film, and it has a similar kind of emotional gut punch at the end, even though there's definitely a strong kind of horror vehicle driving that story. So yeah, I've always loved that film, and I guess for me it's inherently emotional as well, having that personal connection, but the horror really gives it a framework, and I guess hopefully captures the essence of the experience, and yeah, hopefully captures some emotional truth to that experience and how scary it can be, how scary it is for the relatives of the person suffering dementia, but also for the sufferer, and the fear that's associated with losing yourself and losing your loved ones.
Absolutely. Those are some awesome points that you hit on there, especially about identity. I think that's something universal, that not only as we all grow older, but we experience grandparents or even sometimes parents, especially for some older listeners we have out there, who have to face some of these challenges. And I think no matter how much these things can be portrayed in the media, or even when it happens to other people, we're still never quite ready to confront when that happens, right?
Yeah, I think so. Totally. I think it's a really scary thing. And I think it's interesting how much having to confront like your parents' mortality makes you think about your own as well. So it kind of works on a number of levels, I think.
So what really inspired you to take out this project, Natalie? Because you've directed a short film in Creswick, and then you kind of returned to something similar and had kind of blown this out to a feature film again here in Relic. So what were some of the inspirations, and what drew you so closely?
Well, we actually had a first draft of Relic down when we made Creswick. So Creswick was really a, very consciously made proof of concept short film that really showcased it. We kind of used it as a calling card to show partners and investors, just to say, here's what the film's going to feel like. It's got the same tone, the same themes and setting, but Creswick was just a much more succinct story. So yeah, I mean, I think it was built in from the get-go that we were going to make the feature film. So it wasn't like we made the short and thought, oh, how can we expand this? It was kind of the other way around.
I bet you didn't think that the feature debut for this, particularly after you'd finished in 2018, was going to be in the middle of a pandemic, but it's definitely been an interesting year so far.
Certainly has. I'm so grateful we got to squeeze in our premiere though, because Sundance was in January. So it's kind of like the first stirring of it over in the States. I think people were just starting to wear masks on planes, that kind of thing. But yeah, man, like we definitely had a very different year planned ahead of us, but yeah, it's hard to complain, really.
What was Sundance like? Because I've heard different stories from different people that it's extremely hectic sort of place. Is that right?
Yeah, it was such a whirlwind, I have to say. Like, usually you go to festivals and you meet a bunch of filmmakers and you get to see lots of films. So it's great to represent your own film, but then just enjoy it. Whereas this was really like just a whirlwind of press. You kind of have to spend 2 days going up and down the main street doing photo calls for various publications and doing interviews.
Just over and over.
Yeah, pretty much like like a full 6 to 8 hour day doing that. So it's pretty exhausting, but yeah, so fun and just surreal, because obviously it's the type of thing that you dream of for so long. So yeah, it was pretty great. It almost felt like a wedding, I have to say, because my parents were there, and there was like the anticipation of this big event, and everyone's getting ready, and you come together and you're taking photos, and it's like all the little shit, like the logistics of how everyone's going to get to the venue. And yeah. So
was that your first
really
Was that your first big film festival in the States, or?
For me personally, like I've been to Cannes for a short that I produced, not directed. So that was a whole other thing. I think Sundance is actually a bit more intimate because it's such a small kind of town, and it's more of a like winter vibe, and it's cozy. Whereas Cannes is like paparazzi everywhere, and it's more about the glamour.
In the middle of the European summer, right?
Right. And yeah, it's overwhelming in its own way. So yeah, Sundance was actually quite, hectic, but had a nice kind of community vibe to it as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Natalie, I want to talk about a movie that we've mentioned on our podcast, that we watch this podcast a few times now, and I imagine this has shown up in some other interviews. And that was Upgrade. So I recently saw this for the first time, only in the last few months, and I loved it. What can you tell about our listeners about working with Leigh Whannell in that picture, and your experience as an attachment, and how that kind of prepared you for your own feature debut?
Yeah, that was so great. So I took part in this program with Film Vic, and they essentially, you undertake something called a director's attachment, where you shadow a director for 3 solid months. So it was pretty amazing. You're kind of privy to every facet of production. It's like during the shoot as well. I drove him to set every day. And in post-production, I did a few weeks too. So yeah, no, it was cool. I mean, I think it kind of worked out because it was the perfect time that we had one-on-one. Because obviously on set, there's so much going on that it's like, I feel like it's too much to ask for a director to stop to explain something to you or whatever. So it was really great in that way that, I could drive him, and he was really open with me. He'd just kind of like vent, what he was worried about or whatever was coming up that day. So I think a lot of what I learned was very much, not necessarily like hard skills of, craft, but more just what to expect when you undertake such a huge kind of project, the pressures that are on a director, and the expectations as well. And it was really great because I was able to, Upgrade is such a great genre film, and there's a lot of elements of prosthetics and visual effects and set design, for example, like awesome sets. So I was able to see, observe every aspect of that. And a few of the crew on Upgrade I actually ended up using on Relic. So it was nice to continue, those relationships. Yeah.
Speaking of Leigh, he actually sent a tweet out recently giving you praise for this film. Was this...
Oh, really?
Yeah. He said, check it out.
Sorry to steal your thunder there, Leigh, but I guess we're going to be the first to break it.
It's been getting Relic's been getting such rave reviews from what I've seen. I think it's sitting on 100% at the moment on Rotten Tomatoes. How's that been? Are you a person that checks every day, or you sort of back off and go, it is what it is? How do you balance that? Because I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
I'd be
refresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, seriously. Well, when I was at Sundance, they, your press team always asks whether you want to be on the emails of all the reviews coming out. And for me, my first reaction to that was just straight up, no fucking way. Like, I will get way too in my head about it all. I just want to enjoy, Sundance as an experience and not think about it.
Yeah.
As the days kind of progressed, I just ended up reading them anyway, because who can resist? But also they seemed to be relatively positive. So I was like, okay, I can handle this. But then I feel like, I think we've gotten really lucky so far, and we've become, we've been really unscathed in that regard, because the group have been positive. But I'm sure there's some, I'm kind of mentally preparing myself for the fallout once it's like got a wider release, because there's no, inevitably it's going
Yeah.
to be divisive, and people, you can't appeal to everyone. So,
Especially with the ending. Can you give us some insight on this ending? I thought it was extremely powerful. And I was a bit taken back by it. How did that sort of come about for the movie?
yeah, it's such a interesting point, because when we were, looking for partners, people would often push back and be like, how is this going to be emotional? It just sounds really grotesque. But for me, I feel like it almost plays out like a funeral rite. So, for example, in Japan, you wash the body of your loved one before their funeral. So it wasn't too dissimilar from that. And certainly in the performance, that's how we tried to play it, so that you feel the grief and the acceptance, but also the connection in the midst of that as well. So yeah, I hope it works for people. I don't know. It could go either way, I feel.
Natalie, we wanted to ask you, as now someone who's had their first feature film released publicly, and you've got some experience with music videos and plenty of commercial work over the last few years. What advice would you have for other young aspiring filmmakers out there?
Yeah, good question. I feel like the most important thing is to keep making stuff, and it really doesn't matter what kind of scale that's on. I feel like the best piece of advice I ever got was to essentially make sure you're climbing the right ladder. So, when I was at film school, I think I tried to sell myself short by I thought I would pursue a career as a first AD, just because that's what I was good at. And I was like, well, I'm trying to be realistic here. And my lecturer at BCA was like, no, I thought you wanted to be a director. And I was like, well, I do. And so she was like, well, then you should direct. And so instead of pursuing, first ADing for long form, I just made sure I was doing, I did all sorts of jobs like production assisting, whatever it was, for years, but mostly in commercials, because the short form nature of it meant that I could fit in my own projects. So I think that's the most important thing, to not lose sight of why you're in the film industry in the first place, which is, to make films, and just to keep making them, even if they're tiny, even if they're whatever, $500 short films, as long as you're making stuff, you're improving. And also that's the thing with directing, no one's going to give you a job unless you have something to show for it or prove that you can do it. So unfortunately, you have to believe in yourself so much until other people believe in you.
That's a great bit of life advice. Thank you.
No problems.
Awesome. Did you feel the pressure of that being your directorial debut? How is that coming onto set the first day?
Yeah, I mean, I joked with my partner, who is on set every day as well. He's a filmmaker too. That it felt like I'd always, on the drive home, I'd always be like, I've fooled everyone. So there's always that imposter syndrome thing, which, a lot of people experience. So yeah, it doesn't go away. But to a certain degree, once you're in the rhythm of it, you have to put all those pressures aside, because it's too much of an obstacle, or it's too destructive, and it's not helpful. You kind of have to just go, okay, these feelings exist, but I'll just put them aside while I do my job. So,
Natalie, this was shot in Melbourne, is that correct?
It is, yeah.
Awesome. What was it like shooting here in Melbourne? Maybe for some of our listeners overseas, and even some in Australia and some of the other sunny states. Can you talk us through a bit of what that was like, shooting particularly here on location and some of these exteriors in the forest?
We shot in late 2018 at a time when there was a massive Chinese blockbuster called The Whistleblower shooting as well. So our booking of the Dockland Studios clashed with theirs, and because we had to shift dates, it just meant that we lost our booking essentially.
Oh, wow.
And so we had to shoot in this tin shed of a warehouse out in sunshine because we needed, a certain size studio. And it was the biggest pain in the ass just because it was not soundproofed. And so you'd be shooting and then it'd start pouring down with rain and you'd have to hold for rain, which is the most terrible feeling when your actors are, acting their butts off and then you've got to go again just for that. So that was frustrating for everyone. You also had lots of warehouses in the area. So constantly trucks coming in and tradies kind of unloading and that kind of thing. But yeah, it was great shooting in Melbourne. I mean, it was awesome, particularly because it meant that we could really use crews that, my producers and I had known for years. I think that's the most special kind of thing about it, because filmmaking is so much about relationships. And so to already have those relationships and be able to use people who are, because you kind of do become like a family. So I loved it. Yeah, it was great. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any upcoming projects that you're working on while in quarantine or anything coming up?
Yeah, I'm writing a few things. The one that's furthest along is a Japanese folk horror.
Oh, that sounds good.
I'm a huge folk horror fan. So I've been trying to make the most of being in ISO by just trying to write. And I've joined a writing group, which has been a bit of a game changer for me. It's been awesome. Cool. Yeah, we just sit on Zoom and write, just mute on mute. And then you have 15-minute breaks, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's strangely effective. Yeah, I would recommend if you guys are writers.
Yeah, definitely.
We will have to check it out. Dan was a big fan of Midsommar that came out, so he'll be he's keen to find out about your picture. Nice. Yeah, I only saw Midsommar recently because I was trying to save myself. I was like, okay, I can't let this affect, what I'm writing. So yeah, luckily it wasn't too similar. So very lucky.
Before we let you go, Nat, do you want to give, we have sort of a segment on the show where we give our listeners recommendations on what we watched this week. Is there anything you can recommend that you've watched in the past few weeks?
I just finished Dark. Does that count?
Yeah.
I don't know if TV counts, but
sure.
It's such a good series.
Season 3, is it?
Season 3, yeah. I do feel like season 1 was kind of just the most amazing, and then because they've had to extend it a little, it gets a little bit repetitive. I mean, that's the point, I suppose, but still it's just so stunning. And man, those actors have to cry I feel like I have to cry twice an ep, right? I was because I kind of binged it and I was like, fuck, there is no relief. There's no levity at all. Even just one character who was the comic relief would have been great. Yeah. Anyway, great show.
Oh, well, thanks so much for joining us, Nat. Hopefully we can have you on for that Japanese folk horror when that releases soon.
Oh, absolutely. That'll be fun. Thank you, guys. This was fun.
Guys, make sure you check out Relic on Stan July 10th. Thanks again to Natalie.
Spoiler alert.
Dan, we've covered our initial thoughts on the movie. We've listened to this interview now from Natalie. What an interview it was. What did you think of the ending? Because you said it's going to be divisive. And it sounds like in some of other Natalie's works, like that short Drumwave and in Creswick, she likes to swing really big. Here, my jaw was on the floor. I want to know what you thought about the ending.
I thought it was quite touching. It took... there was a few emotional steps along the way, especially I think to when Edna's outside in the forest getting rid of the photo, and that really emotional scene there where the dementia's really taking a hold of her. That was really really great scene and really great performances from both parties there. And then again at the ending, it all came together. It was a different approach. Don't get me wrong. It's floating into that art house vibe where we're seeing this woman deteriorate from the skin as she rips her skin, and we see this sort of, what would you call it? The prosthetics here that we used. She was just fully
it's
covered
like
in
animatronics. It reminded me a lot of the Jonathan Glazer picture with starring Scarlett Johansson, Under the Skin, right? Where we had that same ending, this total unveiling of this other being, and it felt like that the relic here in the movie, Robin Levin or Edna, kind of became this otherworldly being as well. Maybe she'd ascended or descended, having deteriorated and rotted away. But maybe that was like her true form. This is her most honest. And her daughter, who'd been battling this resentment towards her, kind of finally understood that and then took on the same form.
There's a lot to take in here. It is a nice 90-minute runtime, which is always good. But yeah, we see her sort of just blackened and decayed, and it never went for ghosts, or
it wasn't supernatural.
It wasn't supernatural at any point. This is the closest we sort of got to that, besides the walls coming in, I guess. But we don't know if that actually happened or whether that was just.
I can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah, so she was just sitting there completely. I didn't even know if it was Robin even there or if it was someone else. It looked completely different.
Well, it looked like it might have been
covered.
Just a totally animatronic puppet.
And it sort of, to me, it represented sort of a demon inside her that's finally come out. But you could also see it in other ways. There's a multitude of ways that you can take this and look at it from, which is always great. I love that in an ending, or even just in a film's themes in general. So it was a bold choice, and like I said, looking at the reviews, I haven't seen too many people that it didn't resonate with, but it's inevitable, and we always talk about it, general moviegoers. This might not pay off for them.
Maybe not, but those who are willing to give it a chance and aren't going to be sucked into the idea of, is this going to be a ghost story and a haunted house picture? I believe that this payoff is going to resonate with them. And like me, if they're going to have that same feeling of, oh my God, I can't believe what's going to happen next, and this kind of 3-person chamber play, very similar to something like The Shining, it's going to be worth it. And you said it, Dan, at only 89 minutes, we're a big proponent and a big advocate of short movies here on the podcast. You could spend your time doing something a heck of a lot worse. This is an awesome 90-minute movie from some very interesting producers. So who was on board producing this picture? None other than one of my favorites, Jake Gyllenhaal. And Dan, who executive produced this?
The Russos.
Russos. So this is from is it Ugbo? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ugbo. Not only did they bring us 21 Bridges with Chadwick Boseman, but they brought in Dan's favorite feature starring Chris Hemsworth. And
let's not say favorite. Let's not say favorite, but it's up there.
Okay, Mr. 7 out of 10.
Yeah, no, it was good to see some big names producing this. I wish her continued success after this debut. I think it's a fantastic debut, and I think she's going to really become a star.
Oh, we can't wait to see whatever features come out next. And we touched on there in the interview as well, her next project, that J-Folk Horror. And Dan, I said it in the interview, mate, you did love Midsommar, so I know you can't wait for the next picture.
I didn't break. I know you wanted me to break there.
Our listeners, you're all waiting for it. It's such a consummate professional, we might say.
Yeah, no. Midsommar, I can appreciate, okay? Let's just get that out the bat. I did want to ask her about the sound design, though. That was one thing I missed out on. Maybe even it would have been nice to know about the Jake Gyllenhaal's sort of role. Was he just funding this? Is there more to it than that? I don't know. Same with the Russos. I guess it's probably just that, but you just don't know, do you? I don't know how. It's a low budget Australian film. It went to Sundance. It
certainly doesn't hurt to have a big Hollywood name like Jake Gyllenhaal or huge directors like the Russo brothers giving this picture their stamp of approval. And if that puts it out in front of more people's faces and gets them a deal on a streaming service like Stan here in Australia or wherever it might go overseas, more power to her. That is awesome for a debuting filmmaker to have that. And you know what, Dan? That probably played into her getting the spotlight and the feature at Sundance, which, what a festival. Really the only festival to happen this year since COVID hit.
Well, she even said her plans were drastically changed, and I can only imagine I think most filmmakers out there are just as annoyed as everyone else, but even more so because that is a craft that's been really affected, hasn't it, in terms of not just directors, but actors, but sound engineers, whatever, anything to do with movies or filming or TV shows, they've all been cut back. So I can't imagine also for up-and-coming actors, maybe living in LA, the struggle there. You know, they might be waiting tables, and you know they need this next opportunity, and there's nothing going at the moment. So I have heard that they are doing reads and self-tapes online and things like that, so it is still trying to move along, but I can only imagine it's harder for those up-and-comers.
Speaking of actors, Dan, I didn't quite recognise her, but Bella Heathcote, who played the granddaughter Sam in this, she's been in quite a lot of pictures. So taking a look here quickly at her filmography, she's shown up in things like In Time, which was the Justin Timberlake feature, I believe, from quite a few years ago. I don't think anyone remembers
Hold
that.
on, he directed?
No, he didn't direct any star in that one.
Oh my God, I was going to say, Justin Timberlake directing, what timeline are we in here?
JT bringing sexy and sci-fi back. She had quite a significant role in Tim Burton's Dark Shadows, surely a feature no one remembers. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and Nicholas Winding Refn's The Neon Demon.
The Neon Demon, have you ever seen that?
No, have you? I've been wanting to see it for some time.
I have. A very interesting film. Very divisive. It was an interesting watch. I really want you to watch it, Jackson, because I think you'll have some strong opinions on it. Keanu Reeves was in it. A small little cameo there. Ella Fanning. A few names in there. It didn't sort of get the success that it was hoping for at the time, back in 2016. But you know me, I'm a big horror movie buff, so I sort of watch everything if it's a horror or thriller, and that was one off the list that year. Do not remember her specific role in it. I know that she's a great actor, though, and it shows in this film because not only does she put on a good performance, but so does Emily Mortimer, who I've seen in a number of things over the years. I feel like she was in Mary Poppins. Yeah, Mary Poppins Returns.
Yeah, she absolutely was. She's actually a British actress, or have originally born in England, we should say, and she's been in just about everything. I do remember her popping up in Shutter Island, though, as Rachel Solando. Shutter Island, The Neon Demon, and this. We've got some real polarizing movies on the episode today.
Yeah, she was phenomenal, and Robin Neven was the massive star of the film. I thought she put on an unreal performance. Really, I don't think the film would have worked without this performance. You didn't feel like she was acting. You felt like she was this character. She was embodying
on her
dementia, and at no point you knew what she was going to do next. I remember the scene where she cracks it at, I think it was Sam, and she throws things and goes on a rampage. And that is something that does happen with dementia, and it can take a hold of you like that. And it was flirting the lines between, is this dementia or is this a being taking control? You just didn't know where they were going to go with the film at that point. So that was sort of what really helped with the tension for me, I thought.
Yeah, certainly. And part of those scenes just play into the overall vulnerability and uncomfortable sense that this situation would bring. And it feels, not at any point do any of the characters feel like they're acting out of line, or that you're watching a horror movie that you feel like, oh, they're making such terrible decisions. Everyone, including Robin Neven's Edna, who doesn't quite seem to be all there, at least early on, everyone is making smart decisions and doing their best to cope with such a challenging situation. And I think one standout, Bella Heathcote Sam, in that sequence you mentioned earlier, Dan, where she winds up in this crazy upstairs attic kind of cupboard labyrinth, all she can do is press forward. And just what a smart, fantastic bit of filmmaking. And how is that reveal as well when we swing and turn the camera and we realize she's been inside the walls? That, for me, was jaw on the floor. That's like total masterstroke. That was awesome. That totally bumped up my rating. I can't sing their praises.
No, yeah, I agree. And even though it is very metaphorical, symbolic, whatever you want to call it, how the walls are closing in, and the walls are closing in on
suffocating.
Yeah, it's suffocating, and it's showing dementia in a real way. But that scene, as much as you and me both loved it, I feel like general moviegoers may be taken out of it at that point, when you've been so realistic the whole way through. To throw something like that is it's a different take. But I can't sing the praises enough. It definitely bumped up the rating for me as well. And there was some really smart camera work there as well. And for such a, as she said, she didn't have much to work with in terms of sound and the shooting.
The location having to be such drastically changed, right? Going from docklands into a warehouse in Sunshine.
Yeah, I think they've done a phenomenal job of what they were given, and that scene, yeah, it definitely stands out for me. Another scene that stands out is the bath sort of sequence.
Oh yeah,
is that the same for you?
Absolutely. That was another very creepy, eerie feeling that we've got no idea where this is going to go, and it kind of plays into the whole mysterious themes that it would just, who knows how this is going to unfold. We're forever waiting for the penny to drop and for something supernatural to kind of happen, and it just expertly unfolds.
We got the glimpse of the black on her chest throughout the film, and then it was shown more there, and even those the scene where she just sort of goes on the chair and looks up over, it's just those sort of shots from the character's perspective that really brings you in to this film. And it's so smart because you're so hamstruck in a house like this. I can't imagine. You can only do so many different angles, I believe, but it never felt stale. It never felt like I've seen this before. I've seen this shot. They were always mixing it up.
Yeah, for sure. It felt like a concept, and it didn't matter how small the concept was, but a concept fully realized and explored, and no corner was left unchecked. We wanted to make sure that, all right, if we're going to do this kind of twist and spin on a haunted house, quite literally when it comes to the labyrinth inside the walls, let's make sure that we tick every box possible and we really have fun and play around with the set. And it's so much squeezed in, and particularly for something that doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of dialogue as well. The actors are around the board are just giving great performances to communicate what's going on inside their characters' heads and how that speaks to us and what it means to the viewer. And emotionally, it resonates. It works.
Even the side characters here and some of the side narratives that are going on.
Yeah, the BC stories.
I thought, where are these going? Are they going to serve a purpose? And they just keep finalizing these narratives and using them in ways that really work. Like Jamie, the boy that pops up, and the whole side narrative with him there, how it just builds that tension of Edna and what has she done to this boy, or what's happened
and
here.
The scratching at the door. Ooh.
It's subtle, but it just works so well, I thought.
For sure. Dan, can we loop this back as well to the reveal with Edna, with her look, listeners, we'll get into it here, but her flesh falling off and rotting and deteriorating.
Yeah.
What an amazing use of body horror. And it reminded me of watching something like a David Cronenberg feature, like something like Videodrome or Scanners, or particularly The Fly, starring Jeff Goldblum, where it's just bits falling off. And it was visceral. You could feel it. Was it excruciating? Was it as excruciating and as painful to you as it was to me?
It was. I was
gross,
turning to
but it
Shaney
worked.
and going, oh, Jesus.
Sickening.
And it just kept going. They just kept peeling the layers off. Literally, it was just...
Take some cojones.
I don't know how they did it. I really don't know how they did it. I loved how one of the last shots we see is that it's transferred over to the mum. It's just the cycle of life sort of thing. And it's just, I just love this ending because we were building to something that was sort of going to make it a C-grade horror where, you know, we've seen this sort of play out. You know, you've got to perform an exorcism or remove the ghost somehow. You know, we've seen it before. This went a completely different way. And it was such a satisfying ending for me. And especially with that, really creepy. Yeah, it's sort of ambiguous. It just... Yeah, it really left me thinking, as I said, and I can't say, once again, I got to hit the nail on the head. I can't say I was this emotional in a horror in years. I wasn't at tears point, but I was really touched. And maybe, like I said, maybe it's personal experiences from what I've been through. But were you the same, Jackson, or is this just a personal thing for me?
No, I believe it was as well. It is something universal. And at some point in our lives, we've got to deal with family, particularly parents or grandparents, reaching that stage, and that's hard. And even when we try and tell ourselves that we're ready for it, we never quite really are. And we see that in Emily Mortimer's very solid performance as Kay as well, when she believes that maybe the best thing for her mum is entering a is entering a retirement home. She makes that journey back to Melbourne and then immediately realizes that this is the worst thing possible. That maybe her mum, being alone in that big family house in the country in Creswick, of all places, nice little nod there to the short film, isn't the best thing for her, but absolutely shouldn't go in this home. She's
I didn't
still
see
very
that
fit,
nod.
has her wits about her. That was tough, and I'm glad she went down that route in the script.
In terms of what would you have done differently here, Jackson, I can't say too many
interesting
negative
question.
things here. The story she wanted to tell, it is slow, but that's sort of the point of it. It's 90 minutes long, so it's not Quentin Tarantino slow. Jackson, you're gonna kill me.
Is it Ari Aster slow?
No, definitely not Ari Aster slow. That's for sure. And if you're listening still, Natalie, I wasn't a big fan of Midsummer. I'm sorry. I'm hoping
He's pulled wool over your eyes.
I've pulled wool over your eyes here. It's a genre I like, but especially how after seeing that short film, you haven't seen it, have you? Drumwave.
No, I haven't seen Drumwave, but I'm excited for this feature if it ever does release.
Really expand on this thing and make it awesome. I'm actually a big short film fan, Jackson. I watch a lot of short films. I don't know if you know this about me. I went on a binge the other day of Disney shorts, of Pixar shorts, and my God, they're number one. They're just so good. They can pull on heartstrings in 2 minutes. I do not know how they do it. It's unreal. I watched another good short film, Paperman.
Dan, one of the best shorts I've ever seen. Do you remember this one? There was the claymation feature. Was it Harvey Korine?
You mean Harvey Crumpet, the 2003 short? What did you say?
Oh, I'm thinking about the esteemed Springbreakers director, Harmony Korine. 21 episodes in and the shoe's on the other foot, people.
That wasn't animation, was it? Was that?
Yeah, that was claymation. That was claymation.
Claymation. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's claymation.
That was a really touching movie. So I'm totally in line with you, mate, talking about short films. This won the Academy Award when it dropped.
Well, yeah, I went on a binge earlier this year before the Oscars of all those shorts. And I tell you what, there was one that I wanted to get up. It was an Australian film. It was called The Judas Collar. Guys, you need to watch this short. I absolutely loved it. Shot in Western Australia. They nail it. Absolutely nail it. So, yeah, big short film lover, and I really enjoyed Drumwave and Creswick. Let's get into Jackson's beautiful segment, Play the Q Editor. This is my favorite Q of the pod. Here we go.
Tenant.
Jackson's ratings.
IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, audience score, and Letterboxd.
Did you love that, Jackson, when you heard it for the first time the other day?
Moving on to the IMDb score. So, currently, we've only got 180 ratings on IMDb. People, if we haven't made it clear already, after gushing about this movie in an interview with Natalie for the last half an hour, please go see this. Currently on IMDb, 6.9 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes. We mentioned it. 18 critic reviews so far. 100% of critics have given this a fresh review. Fantastic. An average score across those reviews of 8.27 out of 10. People, there is no user score on Rotten Tomatoes. Come on, July 10th. Let's get around this Aussie picture. Metacritic, only 2 critic reviews collated so far. 68 out of 100. And finally, the main event. You've been waiting to hear them. In the red corner, letter. In the blue corner, boxed. 3.4 out of 5 from only 336 users who have logged Relic. Remember, it's not The Relic by Peter Hyams and Tom Sizemore. It's Relic. Please go check it out. Dan, with that, please, what was your final rating?
Well, we should have asked her if she was a big fan of Letterboxd.
We've absolutely dropped the ball in more ways than one with this episode. Come on,
we
people.
are deteriorating. Is that too soon? We are
I didn't-
decaying.
Yeah, rotting. Where's that window, mate? I can see it here on your webcam.
Oh, we didn't even... Yeah. Look, I am going to give this film a whopping 8 out of 10. How's that?
Oh,
Yeah, 8 out of 10.
bravo.
And I want you guys... We're going to post our Letterboxd review if you're hearing this now, we've posted our Letterboxd review. I want you to leave a like on that if you are on Letterboxd. We want the #1 review on this movie because this was great. Available on Stan here in Australia. I'm not sure where it's available worldwide. I believe it is in some select cinemas, Jackson?
Yes, it's having a drive-in festival tour over in the US, and that's kicking off next week too. That's
Get
fantastic.
to the drive-in, guys, because it's just as good sometimes. You know, watching a horror in a drive-in with your significant other can be it's another experience. It's like going to the theater, or it's one of those experiences that we don't want to miss out on. But 8 out of 10. Like I said, really enjoyed it. Came out of nowhere for me, this film. I think I saw one trailer and just was intrigued, especially being Australian film, and it delivered on all fronts, especially for a horror film. You know, we don't have high expectations for horrors these days. It's sad to say, and they just really, Natalie, we're big fans of her, and we want to see what she does in the future. So 8 out of 10 from me.
We definitely haven't made that evident after speaking about how much we love this movie. Dan, it's coming in at 7 out of 10 decaying dream sequences. Super solid picture all around for a feature debut. Awesome stuff. We've said it so many times. We're going to say it again. We can't wait to see what comes next. And thank you to Film Victoria and Screen Australia for helping put this one together. Definitely a win.
And thanks again to Natalie for joining us today. Thank you very much, guys. I think we're going to push that Q&A back again, Jackson. We've continually put it. But guys,
it's going to make a good 21st present, but it might be a 22nd. No one likes you when you're 23. Maybe it ends up there.
Keep sending your questions in. We're rounding them up. It's going to be a massive Q&A session. We're going to get to all your questions. I've had lots and lots come through, and they weren't all about Batman and Superman and DC and Marvel this time. So there's a lot to dive into. What we will do is end with a film that we recommend. And for me, I'm going to recommend to all of you to watch Judas Collar, the short film. It's only going to take out 10 minutes of your day. After you listen to this podcast, type in Judas Collar on YouTube, check it out, and I want you to say, Dan was right. I'm so glad I watched that.
Listeners, I want to recommend a TV series, a doco-series I've been watching, and that's Vice Guide to Film. Vice, in the last couple of years, have been putting together some quite in-depth dissections and discussions, a little bit like this podcast, about some of your favorite movie directors, some you haven't heard of, and even different genres and movements within film. I want to implore you all, go check it out. You'll get some cool episodes on the Indigenous New Wave, and even director, you might have heard of him, David Lynch, and good reminders of films to watch. If that's what we want to do here at this podcast, it's educate and entertain. So please check out The Judas Collar, and please check out Vice Guide to Film. With that, Dan, where can our listeners find us?
You can find Jackson at Marshall on film with an underscore. I can't even remember.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Is it at Marshall on film with an underscore at the end?
It sure is, Dan. Listeners, want you to... Listeners, what would...
Episode 21 is where Dan and Jackson fell apart. It's on record.
I think this is how we break into the second... I think this is how we break into the third and final act of the movie. We've had our lovers quarrel. We've got to find a way to get back together. Please write it for us, listeners. Give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Bring your favorite co-host together once again. At We Watch This Podcast on Facebook, Letterboxd, Instagram, Twitter, even on TikTok. At Marshall on Film, followed by an underscore. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll return next week as we cover the personal history of David Copperfield and our Q&A.
Thanks for listening, guys. It's been a blast.